Welcome back, students. Chapter 5, Build Brand New, available now, Amazon.com. What are we covering today in Chapter 5? But first, let's connect on social media at Vinny Inc. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm really good on LinkedIn. I love to help. Hearing a lot from students on resume coaching, career development coaching, professional development coaching. Chapter 5. Think of your resume as a blind date. I want you to think about something really quick. The job hunt is not a job application. It's a job process. It's a process. It's an audition. It's about making that invaluable first impression. It's about establishing that chemistry. It's going to be a brutal environment employment-wise for your first job in a post-COVID world. I used to say it's a fishing analogy. You make 100 casts for 8 bites for 2 job leads. It's probably going to be like 500 now to get 8. And because you're going to have a lot of people who are unemployed who are willing to get back into the job game for a lesser job, for a lesser salary. So this resume is crucial, particularly in a virtual environment. We're going to talk about that later on down the line about bringing the heat virtually and a lot of those things. But here's what I want you to think about. You've got about as much time as it takes to pass a billboard on the interstate at 65 miles an hour, which is about 3 to 10 seconds to get a potential employer's attention. Here's one of the main things you got to think about. How do you add value to that organization? How do you add value to that job? Every interaction that you have with a potential employer goes into forming this intangible impression to convince them to hire you in probably the most competitive job market that's going to ever occur in your lifetime, at least for the foreseeable future. 9 short months ago, it was a seller's market for talent. Unemployment at an all-time low. Jobs bountiful. Literally overnight, that process, that number became inverted into a buyer's market. For an employer, it's good. It's going to be really good for us. For you, unfortunately, it's going to be a tough sled. But these tools and these tricks that we're teaching you from Build Brand New are surefire winners to gain and grab that employer's attention. I want to teach you how to build the correct resume today. I call it my inverted pyramid process. Think of a pyramid upside down. Many of you lead with your education. Don't lead with your education. It really doesn't tell me a lot. I expect you to have a good education. I expect you to have good grades, even though that really didn't mean a lot to me. I didn't have good grades. I didn't test well. I couldn't pay attention. I hear that from many of you guys. I came from very modest and humble circumstances. So I see what great job winners do. I see what great job seekers do with their resumes. Obviously, always lead with accurate contact info. Also, never use a Word document. Too wordy, gets jumbled up, you get lost. There's so many beautiful visual patterns to adapt your resume. I like the one personally where the information goes vertically down the left side and kind of the meat in the buns kind of goes in the middle in a horizontal manner. Always also lead, keep it on 1 page, by the way. You haven't done enough to deserve 2 pages, and we get lost in that as well. And also lead with a career objective. That's kind of like the headline of the news article or the clickbait or the newspaper. Package yourself. You can adapt different career objectives to different people and different jobs and different employment opportunities. But use that as your sort of your come out or your coming out, your opening statement. So I'll use myself as an example. Aspiring sports marketer, worked his way through Auburn University, 4 years, pursuing my passion of sports writing and sports marketing. Seeking a job in the sports marketing industry. That pretty much sums it up. So be concise in that, and like I said, you can tweak it. Then lead into experience, and leadership, awards, and accolades. I want to see what you did during your time at school. And it really doesn't matter what you did. It's that you did something. You were active. You were engaged. You were self-starter. You showed initiative. You were trying to better yourself for better society. I spent 4 years at Auburn University in sports information. I had a gigantic portfolio of over 200 articles coming out, and I knew I was going to put myself in the top 5 of a job consideration set, and at some point that putt was going to fall. But the main thing, too, in listing your experience and your leadership, don't just bullet it out. Show some results. Show some outcomes. Were you a fundraiser for the dance marathon that raised $100,000 on your campus? Or if you were working your way through school, that's a big one. Or you worked in a coffee shop. Don't just say, I worked at Starbucks. Say, I was barista on the front lines of consumer behavior, serving hundreds of customers per day, learning and understanding their consumption. That's a headline for you. That's meat on the bone, as we say. And then talk about your education, your related skills. As we said, do not use a Word document. And here is my gigantic pet peeve. And you'd be shocked at how frequently this happens. Never send a resume to a generic website. We have several of them. Info at MeltATL, careers at MeltATL. Dear sir or madam, to whom it may concern, here's my resume. I need to make X dollars. Guess what the first thing I'm going to do to when I get that? Because I get them. I'm going to flush it. As opposed to tracking me down. You've got the luxury of the internet and Google and LinkedIn. I used to have to go to the library and get an encyclopedia or Yellow Pages, things you've never heard of, or resource guides, and write a handwritten personal note. We were talking about this morning with one of my guests on my podcast. How about this approach? Dear Mr. Thompson, War Eagle, congrats on your success. Congrats on representing Coca-Cola for 20 years. Not only are you flattering me, not only are you playing to my ego, you're showing me that you did your homework. You're showing me you've done your research. You're showing me what type of employee that you're going to be. It's only as important as you make it. So I want you to think about those two juxtapositions. But again, the pet peeve, no. The generic websites, you dig and you find out everything there is about that person doing that hiring. You push those emotional cues. You touch those emotional cues. Auburn's an emotional cue. Mel's an emotional cue. Sports is an emotional cue. Those awards, those are all those things that you're showing me that you've done your homework, that you're prepared, and this is what type of employee you would be. Hope you've enjoyed this, because this was an important one. This resume is big and going to get bigger in a virtual environment. You want to get your way to the top. We've talked about the brand. We've talked about your passion. We've talked about the steps. We've talked about that you're the most sophisticated consumer there is. Uncover those opportunities. Build your brand. Study your passion. Be authentic. Build that resume. It's going to be that blind date. You want to get to that second date. You want to pass that billboard test. And later on, we're going to talk about social and digital tips to stand out on LinkedIn. I'm Vince Thompson, Chapter 5 of Build Brand New, How Important Your Resume Is. We'll see you soon for Chapter 6.